Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Psalms in Hebrew and Comparative Translations. I really love our Psalms class, and I look forward to it every week. Of course, right now we're in a bit of a every other week kind of schedule. It just so happens that that I have a conflict or there's a Yom Tov or whatever every other week. So that's just the way it is. I don't know what to tell you. There are a lot of Tuesdays that are that are uh that are conflicts. But I did send out this morning the schedule, the dates for the upcoming Psalms class, with also the note that I have been asked by many folks to return to 10 a.m. And the reason why we moved from 10 to noon was because a conflict had come up for my family and that I couldn't do 10, but that conflict will resolve itself in the middle of June. So starting June 24th, we will return to the 10 a.m. time.
Great.
And then and then July 8th we will go to 10 a.m. and it will be every week for July through the first week of August. So it'll be 5 weeks in a row, assuming that nothing comes up, like there's, a thunderstorm that knocks out the internet or, whatever. If everything goes normally, then we'll have class for those 5 weeks in a row, and it will be at 10 a.m. All right. But the next class, which is 2 weeks from today, on the 10th of June. That will still be at noon. All right. So let's jump into today's psalm. As usual, we'll begin by reading it out loud so that we can get the feeling of the psalm in its original and in a couple of different translations. And what we start with is we start by thinking or feeling what the emotional resonance of this psalm is. What do you think the person who wrote this psalm, what emotional state were they in? What is conveyed by the language and the sound and the feel of the psalm? And then the follow-up question to that, to the most basic question about what the psalm feels like, is how would you use this psalm if you were going to use it as a prayer in your own spiritual life? And as we have discovered over the last several psalms, starting with Psalm 51 and through this psalm, Psalm 58, uh, we've noticed that not all of the psalms are really prayerful in some sense. Like these psalms, which are called a michtam, are more intellectual. They present an argument or a particular, or they're exploring a particular aspect of David's life, and and as a result, they are in fact used less in the Jewish liturgical tradition. So we'll find that with our psalm today too. But the Psalm 58, it continues this sequence of of an exploration of David's inner emotional reactions to his to the bad stuff that has come up in his life. And this, you know, like some of the other Psalms that we've read, is about his, in some sense, about his frustration with his disagreements with his father-in-law, King Saul, the previous king of Israel, and also with the people of Saul's court who David feels are colluding with Saul in creating a hostile environment for David. And we've looked at that in we've looked at several instances of that, and I think this psalm tends to be sort of a more there isn't a named person exactly, but it's about that whole situation. So we'll start. Lamanatseach al tashchet leDavid michtam. Ha'umnam elem tzedek tidaberun mesharim tishbetu b'nei Adam. Af belev olot tif'alun ba'aretz chamas yedechem tifalesun. Zoru Rishaim Meirachem, Ta'u mi beten dovrei chazav. Hamat lamo hidmut hamat nachash, kimo feten cheresh yatem ozno. Asher lo yishma lekol milachashim, chover chavarim mechukam. Elohim haras shinemo bifimo, Mal teot kifirim nitots Adonai. Yimaasu chemo mayim yitalchu lamo yidroch chitzav kimo yitmolalu. Kimo shablul temes yaloch nefel eshet bal chazu shamesh. Beterem yavinu sirotechem atad, kimo chai, kimo charon, yis arenu. Yismach tzadik ki chazak nakam, pe'amav yirchatz bedam harasha. V'yomar adam, ach pri latzadik, ach yesh Elohim shofetim ba'aretz. For the leader, al tashchet of David Amichtam. O mighty ones, do you really decree what is just? Do you judge humankind with equity? In your minds, you devise wrongdoing in the land. With your hands, you deal out lawlessness. The wicked are defiant from birth, the liars go astray from the womb. Their venom is like that of a snake, a deaf viper that stops its ears so as not to hear the voice of charmers or the expert mutterer of spells. O God, smash their teeth in their mouth, shatter the fangs of lions, O Eternal One. Let them melt, let them vanish like water. Aim your arrows that they be cut down, like a snail that melts away as it moves, like a woman's stillbirth. May they never see the sun. Before the thorns grow into a bramble, whirl them away alive in fury. The righteous will rejoice when they see revenge. They will bathe their feet in the blood of the wicked. People will say, there is then a reward for the righteous. There is indeed divine justice on earth. I'll read this one, the King James Version. To the chief musician al Tashchit Michtam of David. Do ye indeed speak righteousness, O congregation? Do ye judge uprightly, O ye sons of men? Yea, in heart ye work wickedness. Ye weigh the violence of your hands in the earth. The wicked are estranged from the womb. They go astray as soon as they be born, speaking lies. Their poison is like the poison of a serpent. They are like the deaf adder that stoppeth her ear, which will not hearken to the voice of charmers, charming never so wisely. Break their teeth, O God, in their mouth. Break out the great teeth of the young lions, O Lord. Let them melt away as waters which run continually. When he bendeth his bow to shoot his arrows, let them be as cut in pieces, as a snail which melteth. Let every one of them pass away, like the untimely birth of a woman, that they may not see the sun. Before your pots can feel the thorns, he shall take them away as with a whirlwind, both living and in his wrath. And the righteous shall rejoice when he seeth the vengeance. He shall wash his feet in the blood of the wicked. So that a man shall say, verily there is a reward for the righteous. Verily he is a God that judgeth in the earth. Okay, and we'll go to Rabbi Richard Levy. For the conductor, do not destroy, a Michtam of David. Do you truly speak justice in silence? Do you speak as a community of justice? Do you judge people by principle? No, in thy heart Thou dost instigate insurgents. On the earth thy hands weigh out violence. The wicked are estranged from the womb. Those who tell lies have gone astray from their birthplace. Their venom is like the venom of a snake, like a deaf cobra who stops up its ear so it will not hear the voice of the snake whisperers, or the most sly sealer of spells. O God, break their teeth in their mouths. You shall smash the jaws of the young lions, Adonai. Let them wash away like waves, whipping up the waters in their wake. Let her shoot her arrow so its path is cut off. Let her be like a snail which melts as it passes, like a stillborn baby who never saw the sun. Before your pots can understand the bramble, God will sweep it away like something burning up alive. The just person shall rejoice on seeing revenge. She will wash her feet in the blood of the wicked. And someone shall say, Ah, there is fruit for the just one. Ah, there is a God who passes judgment in the earth.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
thoughts, reactions?
Yeah. Why a pot? A pot?
Yeah,
What's the deal with
pot.
the pot?
Yeah, so this is a very hard thing to translate. Uh Beterem Yavinu Sirotechem Atad. So a seer is a pot. Sirotechem here, it seems to mean pots, but it's not the only way that it gets translated.
Mm.
Uh um
Your pots can feel the heat of the
the Yeah,
thorns
so here it says before the thrones can grow into a bramble. Uh
before the thorns can grow into a bramble.
yeah, so I think right, so that's a different way to understand that verse.
Pots.
Uh yes, right. So their pots is the word that means pots is not translated as pots. It's translated as bramble, which I think makes
Right.
more sense in the context um of the thorns, right? The and the
Right.
um
I don't know if you've ever gone raspberry picking. You get
yeah,
into a thicket of raspberries, and that's all she wrote. Can't get out of that damn thing.
yeah. So the the notes in the translations all say the Hebrew is quite obscure. Like is not at all clear what that means. Eh,
That hero is quite obscure.
The
And
Hebrew
that
is
just sounds like
quite
somebody's
obscure.
pissed off, you know?
Yeah.
This one sounds like some kid, like 10, 11, or 12. He was told he could go to the U2 concert, and then he was acting like a dope, and his parents decided to ground him. And now he's all pissed off that he can't go to the U2 concert. You know, that's
Yeah,
what it
I mean,
sounds like.
it feels like a deeper than that. Uh, so
Not by
the
much.
the this the word sirotechem could mean bramble. It could mean pots.
Uh,
A lot of the things translated as pots. Bramble seems to make more sense, but the problem is that actually it seems to say the thorns understand bramble.
yeah.
The word in Hebrew is yavinu, but the translation the this translation before the thrones grow into a bramble, and also the altar translates it before their thorns ripen in bramble. Um, the the way that you translate it that way is you assume that the text that we have is a textual inaccuracy, that this word here, Yavinu, should actually be Yanivu, which means to ripen. That the nun and the vet are transposed.
Transposed,
Yavinu is a
right.
word, it means to understand. Yanivu is
Oh,
a word, it means to ripen. And the the sense is that maybe at some point in the transmission of this psalm, that word got transposed because both are actual words, but Yavinu is a more common word. So the what some scribe, as they were transcribing it, like went with the word that they knew and not the other word. I certainly before the thorns understand bramble doesn't make very much sense either. Larry,
Right.
Well, he's so angry at God. I mean, this is a thing that's full of emotion.
yeah, it's full of
All
emotion.
the other metaphors are mixed. Why not this one too? He's so mad. He's trying not to make sense. He's pointing out all these crazy things that should
Mhm.
happen to these evil people. He's so angry with God. You can hear him loud, and you can the words even yell.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right too, right? Like, why does the viper, the important part is that the viper doesn't hear the voices of the charmers, right?
It
But
doesn't want to
but
listen. It
right. But
doesn't.
the viper has it both ways, right? It's both a deaf viper and it has its ears plugged up. So I think you're exactly right that the metaphors are mixed in every case, right? If the viper
Mhm.
is deaf, then it doesn't need to have its ears plugged up in order to not hear. It's already
Yeah.
deaf. Right? The only reason why it would plug its ears so that it won't hear the voice of the charmers is if it wasn't deaf. But anyway, so I think you're right. I think there's he's so angry that the metaphors themselves are are struggling, and maybe that's part of the point. Maybe that is part of what makes this psalm so visceral is that the metaphors actually don't work, that
Hmm.
the brambles are understanding the thorns, and that makes no sense. Yeah. Okay.
Line number 8, I really like that one. May they be like a slug that melts away as it moves along. You know, that slime trail that a slug leaves behind, it could be interpreted as, oh my God, this poor snail, it's going to melt away. And
Yeah, I think that's
it's really nice. That's a really nice thing to think about, that it's wrong, but because the slug produces that slime so that it can move away, but you can also interpret it as the slug is moving away, and as it moves away, it's melting.
yeah,
I love that. It's really nice.
that's definitely the image there. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so Larry says that the emotion that he gets most here is rage. Does everybody agree? Are people getting other emotions?
Yeah, the thing about rage can be all kinds of levels. Like mom's all pissed off that you just walked over her clean floor with muddy boots. You don't want to do that twice. There's that kind of rage. And then there's the kind of rage of a person, a young person, and who doesn't get to do what they want to do. And then there's the rage of someone that is like just had it, up to here and a little bit more. So again, I don't know what it is about this set of Psalms, but they all make me laugh and I really get a kick out of them.
I think it's more than emotion here, Rabbi. I think there's more than anger. It's a vengeful, bloodthirsty revenge that they is pleading that God execute, which is somewhat inconsistent with some other teachings where they say, bring them into the fold, teach them, gather them, don't destroy them. And it seems to me this is far, far out to the right.
Yeah, okay. So Murray says it's not just that it's rage, it's vengeance. It's
Yeah.
rejoicing in the vengeance. It's like, let's smash their teeth and wash our feet in their blood, you know? And that is a level of violence that is very uncharacteristic of many voices in the Jewish tradition. And yet um this is it is here, it is present, it is part of it is this particular uh psalm does contain this voice. I would say a couple of things. First of all, I suspect that these psalms 51 through 58, or maybe also 59, right, these psalms that are all called a michtam, whether or not they were written by the same person, they were certainly collected as a collection and then put as a collection into our book of Psalms, right? So, and we've talked about this before, right? Like there are 150 Psalms, but there are way more than 150 poems that could have made it in to the book of Psalms, right? There was a collector, an organizer who was like, okay, these ones are the Psalms. And we've already seen a case where there was a psalm that was a direct repeat of a previous psalm, with only a couple of changes. And that happens a few times. And you'd a modern collection probably would not put in that kind of duplication. They would probably, include it in like a footnote to that psalm, right? Like that is, or maybe you would put it on the same page, right? Like William Carlos Williams has a poem. Um I have eaten the plums that were in the refrigerator and which you were probably saving for dinner. They, I'm sorry, they were delicious, so sweet and so cold. Icebox, I think it says in the poem, not refrigerator. Anyway, then several people have written responses to William Carlos Williams's poem, right? And uh, I have seen collections of poetry where you have William Carlos Williams's poem and then a couple of different, other poets who have responded to that poem. Um, so I think that's how if you were collating uh poetry and making a book of Psalms today, that's probably how you would do that. You wouldn't like call one of them Psalm 14 and one of them Psalm 54 and like have and not even mention the fact that they are duplicates of each other.
Mm.
Um anyway, I all of that to say, I suspect that these psalms, the Michtam psalms, that are all having something to do with David's life, they were a collection and they got put into the book of Psalms as a group. And I think that you can you can definitely see in an arc, a kind of narrative arc. Now we've talked about how they're not actually put in, you might think that they would have been put in chronological order to according to David's life, but they aren't in chronological order. I think
Mm.
they're in some kind of emotional order. That they are giving us a kind of emotional arc. And I think it's an emotional arc of dealing with betrayal uh and it's this emotional, it's an aspect of maybe the um maybe there's this particular psalm which has this violent, rage-filled, like vengeance fantasy. It sort of fits toward the end of that kind of an emotional arc. Hang on, yeah, Larry.
I think he's telling us that it's okay to yell at God, the intensity of your emotion. You don't have to always talk respectfully and quietly, that our prayer can take all kinds of shapes. And God listens to the anger and likes the spirit moving in the person. And this is like validating that.
Yeah, I think that's right. And definitely in Judaism we're allowed to yell at God. We're allowed to express our frustration. We believe that God is an appropriate container for the visceral emotions. And
Yeah.
maybe even we think that it's a safe and healthy way of expressing those instead of going ahead and smashing someone's teeth in or or gutting them and bathing your feet in their blood, instead write a poem about it, right? Instead express that anger to God because God can take it. And that's actually that's like, when you write a very vitriolic email and then just,
Throw it
hit
away.
delete. Yeah. Like, not
If you're
send,
smart.
not send. Don't send that one. Just hit delete. Um, sometimes it feels
So the
really good.
last,
What?
the last, sorry,
Yeah, go ahead.
the last two lines, the righteous shall rejoice, blah, blah, blah. And so that a man shall say, blah, blah, blah. It's sort of like you'll get yours. Just hang on, you'll get yours. And that's that. It's true. Good people are rewarded. You will. You'll get yours.
Yeah.
No, I really like this.
Yeah. So it's interesting, right? The word Elohim often means God. It can also mean judges. Um, right, sometimes so it gets translated a God who judges the earth. Sometimes it says divine justice on earth, right? The the word Elohim means God, but it can also mean human human judges. And clearly this this poem is directed at the mighty ones, at the at the ruling class, or at Saul's court,
Mhm.
right? And um, we have one translation that specifically talks about this as having to do with Avner's refusal to defend David to Saul when David demonstrated that he bore Saul no ill will. And so, right, this particular translation is from what's called the Rashi Ketuvim, the Rashi version of writings. So Rabbi Shraga Silverstein, who wrote this, he is translating based on Rashi's interpretations. So
Mhm.
any time that there's a a hard to translate phrase, he's going to go to what Rashi says. So Rashi comments on this psalm that it is related to Avner. And so that's why he put that in there. I find it helpful to include that particular translation here because it that translation is it's every translation is an interpretation, but this translation is very clearly an interpretation. All right. Other thoughts?
May I comment? I think Larry pointed out a a very human guideline here. When one is so enraged as wanting to tear another apart situation, write a poem, express your anger in writing, and cool down that way, and then your hands aren't covered in blood.
Yeah. Linda.
I keep noticing things like the womb and women and birthing, and I don't understand the context.
Okay, so one of the phrases here, right? Oh, the 7, 8, and 9, these verses are all about they are violent imagery uh of things that are time limited, things that
Okay.
vanish, things that are ephemeral. Right now, they're not the only metaphors for that. We have in the High Holiday service a prayer that has a series of, I don't know, 15 different metaphors for things that vanish, for and none of them are bloody, none of them are violent, right? They're all like the the vanishing smoke, or a dream that disappears from your mind, or a leaf that blows away in the wind, right? There are lots of metaphors that you could use for that which is ephemeral. But here, the because the the poet is so viscerally angry, the metaphors that the poet is using for things which can end are things which are very violent. So it's smashing the teeth of the lions in their mouths, right? It's having melting, like vanishing water, right? Like an ice cube that melts, right? Or having arrows that are blown away in flight, or having a snail, which, as Alba described, right, the snail isn't literally disintegrating as it moves. We know that it's producing a mucus, which it can continually produce. But if you look at the track of a snail, it looks like it's melting. So
Oh.
this idea of a melting, and then one of the examples of these things which are violently ended is a stillbirth, uh, which is a very painful uh example of something which life where life begins and ends, you know, it, where that is a child that never actually even breathes. And
Right.
so that it ends before it even begins. So
Mm.
it's using the stillbirth, I think, in part because of its bloodiness, because of its death. So, right, as another metaphor for something which vanishes before it even exists.
Okay.
It's a very hard to read, very visceral, very, like, anybody who has experienced a miscarriage or a stillbirth probably wouldn't include this particular phrase in this list, right? It's very emotional. And I think the author wants that. I mean, the author is also clearly a man, but I think the author wants to have the bloody viscera as part of this poem.
Just sounds so angry.
Yeah, yeah.
And
May
well,
they never see the sun.
I don't like it.
Yeah, I don't think this poem is designed for regular, everyday spiritual use.
Okay.
Larry.
I don't know. This is I look at this as a prayer. Our prayers are usually moderate, let me say it that way. But it's like we're being given permission, in fact, encouraged to pray with violence, with spirit, with how you really feel. And I think this feels like a prayer lesson that it's okay. In fact, it's good. More than writing, it's asking God with conviction.
Yeah, it is a prayer that the Eternal One take vengeance on the wicked, and specifically not just the wicked, um, specifically the wicked who think of themselves as not wicked.
Who is it?
The wicked who are using their power for incorrect for lawlessness, right? In your minds, you devise wrongdoing in the land. With your hands, you deal out lawlessness. These are leaders that are acting poorly. Yeah.
Rabbi,
Yes.
something else occurs to me too. I know when I need to bring myself out of a particular emotion that is difficult, um, because I'm staying in it too long. Um, I'm often putting on music that is discordant because if I put on the sentimental stuff to bring myself out, it won't. All I do is get angrier. But I think that angry poetry and angry songs can help me in terms of my own anger and help bring me out, say, oh geez, I really am angry, and what am I going to do about it? I think it acts as um a way to move forward.
Yeah. I agree with that. I mean, I think that's sort of what I was saying before about like the Jewish tradition does believe that God is an appropriate and good container for our wrath. Um, you know, instead of taking it out on your enemies, pour it out to God and let God take it out on your enemies.
He can do it better.
And and we have faith that that there is a reward for the just and punishment for the wicked. But even if we can't necessarily see that in our own period, which I think that is the end of this poem is the acknowledgement that justice isn't just rewarding the righteous. Justice is also punishing the wicked. And if you punish the wicked like clearly enough, then the righteous will know that they are also going to get rewarded. Because if the wicked get what's coming to them, then the righteous will also get what's coming to them.
Mm.
I think that's what the ending is. There is fruit for the just one, right? Like the righteous person is able to say, I get it now, because the wicked had their teeth smashed in. I know that I'm gonna be okay. Yeah. All right. So, there are very few uses of this psalm in the Jewish liturgical tradition, and I've said this before, but I do get the feeling that when the rabbis quote a psalm in prayer, they want you to bring the entire emotional tenor of that psalm with you with that verse. And I think
Mhm.
the fact that these psalms, the Michtam psalms, have been largely not used in the Jewish in liturgy, like shows that this vengeance, this anger, it's appropriate, it's good, it's part of Tanakh, it's part of our book of Psalms. There might be times when we read it, but for our regular spiritual development,
Right.
for our morning service that's all about awe and gratitude and setting a tone for our day or whatever. We don't want to bring in this like wrath emotion into our prayer. I think it makes perfect sense that it's not there. So I did find two very like minor mentions of this psalm in the Jewish liturgical canon. One is the image of the deaf snake, of the adder with the stopped up ears, the viper, the deaf viper, right? That image from verse 5, that image is actually used in Midrash to refer to Pharaoh. that is Pharaoh in the time of Moses and Aaron. That Pharaoh is like a deaf viper because Moses and Aaron come to Pharaoh to say, "Let my people go," and Pharaoh specifically won't hear them. Pharaoh is specifically choosing to not to be played by by their music, right? Not to be charmed by Moses and Aaron as snake charmers. Okay, so this phrase is used to describe Pharaoh in the Midrash, and there is a poem that was written specifically to be read on the Shabbat before Passover that incorporates that phrase as a reference to Pharaoh. It took me a little while to figure it out because I was reading through and I couldn't find the verse. I couldn't find the verse. Like, you know, I do a search by the verses of the psalm, and it popped up that this verse was referenced there, but the verse isn't actually there. It's just the phrase of the deaf viper. And then I realized that it was being used not to refer to the wicked or Avner or anybody having to do with David at all, but specifically Pharaoh. And then I found a couple of midrashim that are connected to that idea. So Pharaoh is the stopped up viper, and uh, and this poem, which is a liturgical poem designed for inclusion in the morning service on Shabbat Hagadol, the Shabbat which precedes Pesach. So I don't know of any communities that add in special poetry for the Shabbat preceding Pesach. So, it's possible that there are some Orthodox communities that do. I haven't been to every Orthodox shul in the world, but I've been to several, and I've never been to any that specifically add in special poems for this. I do have a machzor for the first day of for Passover that includes some of these kinds of poems in the back of it. Like here are some like possible inclusions, but I don't know any community that actually does them. Or at least not this one. But I do think it's very interesting. So anyway, it's there. And then we've talked about Perek Shira before. Perek Shira is a collection. It's sometimes called the Song of the World, and it's a rabbinic compilation of beautiful verses. The idea is every bit of creation is singing a song of praise to God, and every bit of creation is singing to God, and it's a collection of verses, mostly from Psalms, but also from other places, where it gives voice as a verse to each creature and what that creature sings to God. But not just the creatures, like the mountains and the skies and the clouds and the rain and everything sings a song of praise to God. And and so there's just this beautiful it's just a beautiful collection of verses. I have it here. All right. So this is my I'm gonna turn off my
Background.
my background. Okay. It's been so long since I've turned off my background that I'm having trouble doing that. Where?
What happens?
Rabbi,
Yeah.
Shvoch Hamadcha.
Yes.
Always
Shulchan is a beautiful example of the idea that we pour out our wrath to God and let God take care of the enemies. So this is my copy of Perek Shira. It's a it's a nice illustrated version. And so it starts with the heavens and earth, right? So Shamayim Omrim, the heavens sing, Hashamayim Misaprim Kivod El Umaseh Yadav Magid Harakia, which is a verse from Psalm 19. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the expanse of the sky relates God's handiwork, right? So each thing has a verse. Anyway, so as you probably expect, uh the um the verse 9, which is the snail, is in fact quoted as the snail's song. So the snail sings, Kimo shablul temes yaloch nefel eshet bal chazu shamesh, like the snail that melts and slithers away, like the stillbirth of a mole that did not see the sun. So that's a different translation. Uh, Here we are. There's our snail.
You're
Yeah.
showing your screen, Rabbi. You're showing your screen. We can't see that because you're not.
Oh,
I can see it.
yeah,
I can see
yeah.
it.
You're totally right. Ha-
Oh,
There,
that's much better.
now we can see. Good.
Yeah, so there's your snail.
Oh,
Anyway, I
goodness.
do obviously you can there are some people who read Perek Shira every day or who read it every week. There are 6 chapters, so you can read the first chapter on Sunday and and then the second chapter on Monday and the third chapter, etc. Each of the days of the week. Different people uh read it in different ways. It's cute. It's not like uh anyway, I like it. I think it's very, very, very beautiful idea. Some sources believe that Perek Shira comes from, King David himself as the author of the Book of Psalms. Some suggest that it comes from the sages of the Talmud. My guess is it's later than that. But the basic idea is everything praises God and sings its own song. And what song that they sing is the song that is uh that connects to a verse from Psalms, which I think it's very cool. Very cool.
Your books are a great background too.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
do I do really love my study. Though I wish it had an outdoor window, but aside from that, I really like my office. And yeah, I like the stained glass background. All right.
Rabbi,
Yes.
um, Perek Sheva, is there a translation in that or is it all in Hebrew?
No, this one has a translation. It's
Does it?
not it's not
Okay.
my favorite translation. The people who put this book out, uh, it's the Art Scroll Schottenstein series. But yeah, I mean, this version of Perek Shira came out in 2004. There might be other versions that are more recent. Um, and certainly you can also read Perek Shira online, and it's all translated on Safaria.
Saparia? Oh, great.
Yeah,
Okay,
if you
I'd
go,
like to take a look
yeah,
at
I
that.
mean everything's on
Yeah,
Safaria, but yeah,
yeah, yeah.
if you just search Perek Shira. Anyway, the reason why Perek Shira shows up as uh as liturgy is because some some people have the custom of reciting it as part of the morning service, or reciting part of it as part of the morning service. I'm
Ah,
putting into the link here. I put the link to Perek Shira um into the
thank you.
yeah, into the link. So this particular the translation and adaptation that's in um Safaria is from Rabbi Natan Slifkin. But I think it's really I think it's very it's a nice way of weaving in all of these beautiful, mostly Psalm verses from Psalms, some verses from other places. Um, but I just think I think it's very beautiful. And we've encountered a few cases of like this isn't the first time in this class that I brought up Perek Shira. Um, the very first verse of Perek Shira is from Psalm 19, and we did Psalm 19 in this class. So it did come up. Then Psalm 33 there. Anyway, yeah, terrific. All right.
Thank you.
Uh, we'll close with the spiritual applications from Rabbi Richard Levy, as we often do. Rabbi Richard Levy writes, feeling besieged by others can in time wear away our conviction that human beings are created in the image of God, right? So the danger of wrath, the danger of anger, the danger of the bad stuff happening to us over and over and over. And clearly, this is the eighth psalm in a whole series of psalms about all of the betrayals that David has felt. The danger of that kind of betrayal over and over is that you start to think of the people who betrayed you as less than human, as subhuman, or as not actually created in the image of God. Thinking of those who oppose us as curs can be helpful in boosting our own self-esteem and our courage, but it should also make us uncomfortable. If we have a dog, is it not an insult to this animal to compare it to someone we feel is out to undermine us? And at the same time, it is a reminder that just as we love the dog, who to others may be a source of discomfort or fear, so the people we regard as enemies have those who love them, including God. In several moments in this psalm where the poet is engaged in lofty praises of God, she is dragged down to earth by the image of enemies barking in the streets. Could she not integrate those images, praying that God help the enemies fulfill their best selves and to help us see those selves? As the ideal in Psalm 23 is that God prepares a table at which the poet and his enemies sit down together. Perhaps the challenge of this psalm is that if we live in a fortress of faith in God, we might invite those who we feel misunderstand us, even hate us, into our homes, that we might talk about what it would mean if we were all surrounded by a feeling of such trust in God that none of us needed to be afraid of an enemy or plot his downfall. Is this naive? Is it messianic? Of course. But faith is messianic, setting up high ideals that make us ask, what can we do to attain these ideals, impossible as they may seem at the start? How can we begin to climb that fortress and bring others along with us?
Wow.
I guess how I feel about this is I really love his comments, but I don't feel like he really addresses the anger of this poem. It's like he skips over it altogether. I mean, I
We're
like what he
here.
said, but I feel like Oh, you know what?
What?
There's a reason why he doesn't address the wrath of this poem. It's because
Why?
it's because I've actually given you the spiritual applications of Psalm 59. So hold on to this. In 2 weeks, we'll read that. And I'm just going to read you the one from this poem. You know, I was like, maybe was he reading the same poem as me? Okay, ready? Okay, I'm so sorry. I wrote up the wrong one.
I'm glad.
Yeah, he doesn't usually get it so wrong. All right. Okay, here we go. Ready? The vengeful tone in this psalm may make it difficult for us to read it as a guide to a deeper appreciation of God's presence in our lives. But that
Mhm.
may be a result of the fact that most of us live in the early 21st century, have not experienced the kind of raw injustice that drives the poet to such fury. Is
Mm.
anger a spiritual expression? It must be, for it is a quality of God. See the expression "vayichar af," and God's nostrils became hot, which occurs many times in the Torah, and similar
Ooh.
manifestations of God's anger fill the books of the prophets. Maimonides' Hilchot Deot and the Musar literature see anger as basically a negative, destructive emotion. But because it was created and utilized by God, they know it can have a purpose as well. When our own hearts ache because wicked people go unpunished, it may remind us how strongly we feel about the need for justice in the world, and the pain of our awareness of its lack may drive our prayers that God institute the rule of just behavior, just government, just authority, but also that it drive us to strive to make justice a reality in our own world. Prayer occurs in many forms, and anger at injustice can grow into a powerful plea that God turn us into instruments for making judgment roll down like waters, as Amos cried, and justice like a mighty stream. We sometimes feel that spiritual work and social justice live in two different realms, that one cannot seek the presence of God in one's life if one is consumed with changing society, and that if one is immersed in social justice, it is a distraction to seek for the presence of God. Psalm 58 reminds us that God dwells in the realm of human interaction, and humans, to be fully human, must dwell in the realm of God. See, that one actually, that connects to this
That
psalm.
one works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm glad I noticed that. I really apologize. Of course, if I hadn't noticed right now, I would have noticed when I started preparing Psalm 59, and then
That makes
I would have had to start next time with a retraction. But luckily, I noticed it right now. All right. Thank you, everybody. We will not meet next Tuesday, which is the second day of Shavuot, Yizkor, on which we Shavuot, of course, the holiday of the giving and receiving of the Torah.
Yes.
And so that's this coming week. Then we will meet 2 weeks from now on June 10th. We will meet at noon, and then the next time we meet, which will be the 24th of June, we will meet at 10 a.m. and we'll do the 10 a.m. time for the summer. All right.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.